The marble lobby on Park Avenue smelled like lemon wax and burnt espresso, money wearing cologne. Outside, January rain stitched the sidewalk. Inside, Ana Morales hugged a canvas tote where a lunchbox knocked softly against a tin of crayons. Her thrifted wool coat was still damp from the bus. The receptionist glanced up, then past her, fingers tapping a keyboard that sounded like expensive rain. "Ana Morales?" the woman asked, polite and chilly. "You can wait there?" She indicated a leather bench that looked too perfect to sit on. Ana nodded and moved carefully, her sneakers squeaking against the floor. Two men in tailored suits paused by a glass-walled conference room, eyes flicking over her like a barcode that wouldn't scan. On the far wall hung gala photos in silver frames, crystal chandeliers, black tuxes, charity checks the size of doors. In one, Daniel, her Daniel, stood younger and sharp in a tuxedo beside a silver-haired woman with kind eyes. The plaque read, "Beatrice Sargent Foundation Gala, 2018. The elevator chimed. Elvira Sargent swept out like weather you couldn't ignore. Cashmere the color of fog, diamonds catching fluorescent light, a black umbrella snapping shut with authority. She smelled faintly of lilies and old money. The receptionist half stood. "Ms. Sargent, the conference room is ready." Elvira nodded, then froze at the sight of Ana. Her gaze inventoried coat, tote, damp hems. "This is a private matter," she said, not to Ana but to the room. "I'm Daniel's wife," Ana said, steady. "We were married 11 years. We have 2 kids." Elvira's smile was thin and surgical. "You were an interlude. I'm sorry for your confusion." Ana tasted copper under her tongue. Daniel wanted Sofia and Mateo to know their grandmother's legacy. He wanted them to know her name. A junior associate in charcoal, file folder tucked to his ribs, materialized like he'd been summoned. "Mrs. Morales? Javier Green? If I can explain the situation briefly." He indicated a small side room, all glass and emptiness. On the table, a white envelope. "What situation?" Ana asked, hearing her voice from far away. "The Sargent family is exercising their right to exclude non-blood relatives from probate proceedings," he said, not unkind. "Inside you'll find a modest stipend for your time and a release form." His glance skated to Elvira, already turning away, phone in hand. A security guard shifted his weight. Rubber soles squeaked. "I'm not here for money," Ana said, although rent was 3 weeks late and the gas shutoff notice sat on her counter like a dare. Daniel loved his children. They carry his name. "The family recognizes the children's right to supervised visits," Javier offered, apologetic. "There are cultural differences." Ana lifted her chin. "Our cultural differences are caldo de pollo when someone's sick and bedtime stories in 2 languages. We celebrate Day of the Dead. We don't erase the dead." Silence fell heavy, more vault than room. The receptionist slid a tissue box toward Ana as if that could stand in for compassion. "Mrs. Morales?" Javier said, gesturing to the envelope again. "It's really best." Ana's gaze snagged on another photo, Beatrice again, hand resting on Daniel's shoulder, those wise eyes not missing much. The elevator dinged somewhere far away. Ana took the bag the receptionist offered, a donation tote apparently, and felt its surprising weight. "Cookbooks," Javier said. "Ms. Sargent didn't want them." A laugh bubbled up in Ana's chest and died there. Cookbooks. She turned to go. Rain streaked the windows, blurring red taillights to long, bleeding lines. Queens greeted her with the smell of boiled cabbage and bleach. The landlord's radio bled old salsa through thin walls. Sophia's homework lay open on the couch, pencil knotted in her hair. Mateo's dinosaur pajamas waited on the chair. Life here was a braid of dawn cleaning at St. Gabriel's, lunch rush at the diner, late-night laundry folding under a buzzing fluorescent bulb. The envelope in her tote held $500 and a waiver that wanted all claims surrendered. She didn't sign. "Mom, I'm hungry," Mateo said, serious little face under yellow kitchen light. "I know, mijo. Milk, half an onion, 3 eggs, leftover rice. Egg tortillas. Your favorite." She forced cheer into her voice. Sophia looked up, a 10-year-old with her father's thoughtful eyes. "I can measure," she said. "We learned fractions." They cooked, the apartment filled with the smell of warming oil and toasting flour. A neighbor knocked, Mrs. Jimenez with a jar of homemade salsa. "For the kids," she said. Car later, after dishes and toothpaste and 2 rounds of "Tell Me About Dad," Anna stood by the window and watched the 7 train rattle past, lit rectangles floating in the dark like promises. On the table, the bag of cast-off cookbooks sat with spines turned toward her like a question. She pulled one free, a faded cloth cover, a Mère the Ma Beatrice's hand. Anna flipped, fingers tracing those small loops. Between lemon pie and chocolate soufflé, a penciled note, "Check Grandma's pearls for Elizabeth's graduation," safe in the blue box. Farther on, tucked between recipes for wild rose jam and apple jelly, she felt something thicker than paper. An envelope, lavender, sealed with wax, impressed with an S, tied with a thread the color of old violets. It smelled faintly of something elegant and gone. Her hands trembled. On the front, in that same careful hand, Ana Morales. Not housekeeper, not Daniel's wife. Her name. "Mama?" Sophia stood in the doorway, hair sleep mussed, Daniel's old t-shirt slouching to her knees. "What's that?" "I'm not sure." Anna swallowed. It was in Beatrice's cookbook. "Is it money? For rent? Practical? Hopeful?" "I don't know, mija." Anna pressed the envelope to her chest, felt its weight answer. "We'll find out in the morning, when Mateo can see too." She carried the lavender envelope to the window and held it up to the street lamp glow. Inside, folded papers on thick cream stock. Official, final, a door waiting. Anna set it on the nightstand beside Daniel's stopped watch and the tiny silver spoon Beatrice once pressed into her palm. The wax seal gleamed softly in the dark like a pilot light. Outside, the rain eased to a hush. Inside, the envelope waited, and everything else, rent, lawyers, Elvira's cold smile, seemed suddenly, impossibly, about to change. At dawn, the radiator rattled like a stubborn heart. Anna brewed coffee in Daniel's old metal pot, set 2 bowls of cereal, and slid the lavender envelope from the nightstand into her coat pocket. The wax seal felt cool through the wool, a coin of courage. She walked to St. Gabriel's in the gray light, the city still half asleep, delivery trucks exhaling, a bus sighing at the curb, someone hosing salt from a bodega stoop. Inside the church, the air held incense and lemon oil. Father Michael nodded from the sacristy. Anna nodded back and went to work, dusting hymnals, straightening pew cards, gathering Kleenex left by yesterday's grief. At her lunch break, she sat on the stone steps with a paper cup of coffee and a ham sandwich wrapped in wax paper. She turned the envelope over in her hands, then broke the seal with a soft crack. The thread slid free. Inside, thick cream paper, a notary stamp, and a letter written in Beatrice's steady script. To the woman who keeps Daniel's children warm. The first line hit her like a bell. Beatrice wrote about a day in St. Gabriel's basement years ago, A food pantry morning when a young mother placed a knit cap on a shivering toddler who wasn't hers and gave up her spot on the folding chair so an old man could sit. I have lived among chandeliers, Beatrice wrote, and yet I have rarely seen light like that small, unadvertised mercy. The letter ended with a plea and a charge. Protect Daniel's children and open a house too long closed. Clipped to the letter was a notarized codicil, Seacrest Manor, Southampton, conveyed in trust to Ana Morales, to be held for the benefit of Daniel's children and children in similar circumstances, those who come in from the winter. Lines of parcels, dates, the formal backbone of the law. In blue pen, an attorney had scrawled an estimated value Ana could hardly absorb. $596,000. She read it twice and the world didn't tilt. The city kept moving, but inside her chest, something stood up straighter. Back in Queens, Sophia and Matteo leaned over the cream paper at the wobbly Formica table like scientists. So, a house? Matteo asked, eyes round. Like in a movie? Like a responsibility, Ana said, though her mouth trembled into a smile she couldn't stop. And maybe a beach. Sophia traced a sentence with her finger. We have to show this to a lawyer. They started small. Father Michael knew a student at CUNY Law who volunteered at a community clinic. Maria Delgado agreed to meet at the deli on 37th Avenue, where the owner knew how to make coffee strong and cheap. She arrived in a navy blazer that might have been borrowed, and a canvas backpack sagging with casebooks. Her nails were bitten to moons. Her eyes were quick. This is legit, Maria said after 10 silent minutes, pushing her glasses up and tapping the notary seal. Proper witnesses, dates, language. If this is genuine, and everything here says it is, the family can contest, but the court will listen. Elvira will fight, Ana murmured, picturing cashmere and diamonds and the way a room bent around that kind of certainty. She'll fight with lawyers who charge by the sigh, Maria said dryly. We'll fight with paper and patience. How much does paper and patience cost? Ana asked, thinking of the red-stamped rent notice, of Sophia's asthma inhaler refill. At the clinic? Maria smiled. Bus fare and coffee. She grew serious. But I won't lie. This will be loud. The sergeants have press on speed dial. Ana remembered the tissue box sliding toward her like a substitute for mercy. She thought of Beatrice's line, unadvertised mercy, and felt steadier. Let them bring cameras, she said. I have nothing to hide. The phone rang that night as Sophia iced sugar cookies from Beatrice's recipe, and Matteo arranged dinosaur battalions on the radiator. A man's voice introduced himself as Carlos Sargent, Daniel's uncle. His diction had weight, like marble. My niece informs me you possess certain papers from my mother, he said. We should discuss this privately. I've filed the codicil with the surrogate's court, Ana said, keeping her voice even as Matteo tried to make a T-Rex eat a Stegosaurus cookie. There's nothing to discuss in private. A pause, then a sigh that sounded almost human. You do not know this family, Mrs. Morales. I knew Daniel, Ana said, and I met your mother once. She knew exactly what she was doing. After she hung up, she stood by the window and watched the 7 train ghost past like a slow comet. The lavender envelope lay open on the sill, the wax seal kept like a relic. A text pinged from Maria. Hearing scheduled next Tuesday. Wear whatever makes you feel like you can carry a mountain. On Tuesday, the courthouse smelled like old paper and furniture polish. Reporters idled by the metal detectors, murmuring names. Inside the surrogate's courtroom, Ana sat between Sophia and Matteo, a peppermint in each small palm, Maria on her other side with a binder puffed with tabs. Elvira entered wrapped in winter white, pearls slicing the morning. Carlos walked beside her, less armored in daylight. Two men in suits that looked like they'd been grown in a greenhouse took seats behind them. The whisper traveled, Ortega and Associates. The clerk called the matter. The judge, a woman with silver hair cut sharp at her jaw, adjusted her glasses on a chain and lifted Beatrice's codicil with careful fingers. Ortega rose, voice smooth as granite, arguing decline, surprise, inconsistency with established intent. He pronounced cookbook like it was a joke. When it was Maria's turn, she stood, smoothed papers that didn't need smoothing, and let the documents speak. Notary acknowledgments, witness affidavits. Beatrice's letter, the woman who keeps Daniel's children warm, admitted as an exhibit. The judge's eyes softened at the edges as she read. Carlos, asked under oath if his mother was lucid 8 weeks before her death, said simply, "She was stubborn to the end." Elvira, asked whether she knew her grandmother tucked notes in cookbooks, tried to sidestep, and then, under the judge's stare, conceded, "She wrote in everything." 15 minutes of recess stretched like a year. Mateo drew the courtroom in his notebook, labeling stick figures with care. Judge, me, mom, mean lady in white. Sophia sat so straight her back must have hurt. When the judge returned, the room held its breath. Having reviewed the codicil, the affidavits, and the notarial records, she said, voice even, the court finds the document valid and the decedent's intent clear. Seacrest Manor is conveyed in trust to Ana Morales for the benefit described. Clicks of camera shutters spattered the air like rain. Elvira's face flushed high. Ortega rearranged his jaw into professional neutrality. Carlos looked down, then up at Ana, and inclined his head the smallest degree. Ana exhaled a breath she felt like she'd been holding since the marble lobby and the thin smile that named her interlude. She squeezed Sophia's hand. Mateo whispered, awed, "Do we have a beach?" "Maybe," she whispered back, laughing and crying at once. "But first we have work." In the hall, microphones waited like flowers thrust too close. Maria lifted a palm, running interference. "No comments today," she called, voice larger than her blazer. Outside, snow dusted the courthouse steps, dissolving the second it landed. A taxi idled, warm air a blessing. As Ana tucked Sophia and Mateo inside, a voice called her name. She turned. Carlos stood alone under the ledge, snow catching on his shoulders like gray confetti. "My mother hated empty rooms," he said. "Whatever happens next, fill them." "I will," Ana said. He nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. The cab pulled away. Queens unfurled ahead. Laundromats, taquerias, steam blooming from street grates, the particular, stubborn beauty of a life built piece by piece. Back home, the lavender envelope lay open on the table. Beatrice's script still steady. Ana stared at the codicil, then at her children's winter boots by the door. "Pack a bag," she said, a smile she couldn't help finally rising. "We're going to see a house by the sea." And from somewhere, memory or prayer, she heard Daniel's voice like a hand at her back. "Build something beautiful." The highway unspooled like a gray ribbon all the way to the island, the city shrinking in the rearview mirror until it was just steam and stories. Sophia pressed her forehead to the window, counting gulls. Mateo narrated every bridge we crossed like a sportscaster. Ana drove with both hands on the wheel and Beatrice's letter in the console, a paper heartbeat. Southampton looked like a postcard pretending it wasn't. Cedar shingles, white fences, a bakery with a chalkboard sign promising cinnamon knots. Then the road turned toward the ocean. The air changed to salt and pine, and Seacrest Manor came into view. It sat high on a knoll, shingles weathered to pewter, windows like a face that had watched many winters. A wide wraparound porch hugged the first floor, the kind of porch that invited hot chocolate in January and lemonade in July. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Matteo whispered, "It looks like a giant ship that forgot to sail." The front door swung open before Anna could knock. A woman in her late 60s stepped out, iron-gray hair tucked into a low bun, sturdy shoes, a softness around the eyes that made you feel seen. "Mrs. Morales?" she called, and Anna heard the hint of a Carolina childhood under Long Island vowels. "I'm Helen Davis, the caretaker. Ms. Sargent, Beatrice, told me you might come. One day soon you'll open the door for the right person," she said, and I laughed at her for telling fortunes. "Please call me Anna," she said, suddenly shy in her best thrift store blouse. "These are my kids, Sophia and Matteo." "Welcome home," Helen said simply, and the words settled in the foyer like a blessing. Inside smelled like lemon oil and sea. Sun fell through tall windows onto black and white marble tiles worn smooth by generations of steps. On the right, a library climbed floor to ceiling with ladders on rails. On the left, a parlor slept under white muslin dust covers like a stage waiting for the curtain. "This is the main house," Helen said, pointing. "Kitchen's been updated. Praise the Lord. East Wing has the music room and a small conservatory. West Wing has guest suites. No one's used the third floor in years, but the bones are good." Sophia drifted toward the library, as if it had magnetized her ribcage. "Can I?" she asked, already sliding a ladder an inch. "Careful," Helen smiled. "Pick your spot. The window seat sees the sunrise." In the kitchen, copper pots glowed on a rack, and a farmhouse sink the size of a kiddie pool waited like a dare. Someone, Helen, had set a plate of still warm blueberry muffins on the island. "From Sullivan's down in town," she said. "We'll bake our own soon, but first day calls for a treat." Matteo inhaled, eyes rolling back like a cartoon. "We live here?" he asked between crumbs. "If we choose to," Anna said. Responsibility before fantasy. But she took a muffin anyway, and let herself taste sweetness without apology. Helen pulled a leather-bound notebook from a drawer and laid it on the island as if it were a crown. "Before she passed, Ms. Sargent dictated this to me. She called it What the House Wants Now. Programs, budgets, even the name. On the first page, in Beatrice's neat hand, Seacrest Trust, opening the doors to children who come in from the winter. Below bullet points, emergency housing for moms and kids, on-site childcare, tutoring, legal aid hours, a community garden where roses used to be because food is also dignity. Anna ran a hand over the ink. She thought of everything. "She thought of you," Helen corrected softly. Said, "The woman with the knit cap knows how to turn a house into a home." They toured. Matteo claimed a small room lined with model ships and a window that framed a sliver of steel-blue ocean. "Dad slept here once," he said, reverent, finding Daniel's initials carved faintly into the underside of a desk drawer. Sophia found a turret room with a built-in bench and announced it was perfect for thinking big thoughts, then blushed. Anna's room, Beatrice's, was spare and light. On the nightstand, a small book, BLS, Notes 2017-19. She didn't open it yet. Some doors ask you to knock first. By afternoon, the house had begun to remember how to hold noise. Helen showed them the utility room, boilers cranky in March. The pantry, too many tins of anchovies, will donate. And the back stairs that servants once used, now a shortcut between kitchen and bedrooms. We'll need people, Anna said, notebook in hand. Teachers, a social worker, someone to run logistics, volunteers, a board that isn't just last names. I've got numbers, Helen said, patting her pocket. There's a retired principal at the Congregational Church who runs the coat drive like a general. And the ladies at the library will arm wrestle for story hour. They stood in the sunroom where late light turned the ocean to hammered silver. The quiet wasn't empty. It felt like breath held. We'll start small, Anna said. 2 families by summer. A Saturday tutoring circle. Free breakfast weekdays for anyone who needs it. No forms, no questions. That's how you know you belong, Helen said. When someone hands you a plate and doesn't ask for a biography. On the mantel in the great room, silver frames held sergeant faces across decades. Beatrice as a young woman in a tea dress, Beatrice with a baby, Beatrice older in a cardigan, eyes warmer. Tucked behind one frame, Anna noticed a blue envelope the color of beach sky. Inside, a key with a brass tag stamped Blue Room Safe and a note in Beatrice's print. If Elvira contests, the Blue Room knows what to do. Anna felt the shift in her stomach before she heard the tires on gravel. Headlights swept the drive. The front bell pealed, a rich, old sound that still managed to make you flinch. Helen glanced at the clock. We're not expecting anyone. Through the sidelights, Anna saw a dark sedan and 2 men in suits with expressions like paperwork. A woman stood between them in winter white, pearls like frozen rain. Elvira. Helen's mouth pressed into a line. You want me to handle the door? No, Anna said, tucking the key into her pocket and smoothing the front of her blouse with hands that wouldn't shake. I'll answer my own house. She opened the door to the cold. Elvira's perfume moved first, then her voice. Ms. Morales, she said, tone just this side of cordial. You've made yourself comfortable. We're getting to know the rooms, Anna said. We have a lot of names to learn. The taller man produced an envelope. Legal cream. Heavy. Temporary restraining order, he announced, as if reading the weather. Filed pending appeal. It bars occupancy and changes to the property by any party until the Sargent family's motion is heard. Anna took the envelope. The paper was thick. The ink looked expensive. Her pulse thudded anyway, steady and human. Behind her, she could feel Sophia at the staircase landing, Matteo peeking from the library, Helen a warm, immovable presence at her shoulder. Elvira's smile didn't reach her eyes. It's nothing personal, she said, which meant it was. Some things require order. Anna looked down at the order in her hands, then up at the woman who had tried to send her home with cookbooks and a tissue box. The house hummed around her, radiator warmth, ocean hush, the quiet tick of a clock that had measured 100 winters. Funny thing about winter, Anna said softly. People still find a way inside. She stepped back into the foyer, the edge of the blue key cool in her palm, the safe she hadn't seen yet calling up from the 2nd floor like a promise. Would you like to come in, Miss Sargent? She asked. Or will you serve your papers from the porch? The restraining order felt like a slab of ice in Anna's palm. Thick paper, colder meaning. Elvira stood on the porch with 2 attorneys like bookends, the sea wind teasing the edges of her winter white coat. It's standard, Elvira said smoothly. Until our appeal is heard, no occupancy, no alterations. You understand, order. Behind Anna, the house breathed. Radiator warmth, salt air slipping through old wood, Sophia's careful steps on the landing, Mateo's dinosaur tail poking from the library doorway. Helen took one small step forward, sturdy as a lighthouse. "Miss Sargent," Anna said, steady, "you're welcome to come in while we read whatever you've brought. It's cold." Elvira's mouth twitched. The tiniest rebellion against kindness. "5 minutes," she said, sweeping inside like she owned the weather. The attorneys followed. The door sighed shut. They gathered in the foyer under Beatrice's portrait. One lawyer, olive suit, careful hair, cleared his throat. "The order bars habitation or programmatic use pending appeal. Utilities remain on to prevent waste. Keys will be surrendered to a neutral receiver." Helen folded her arms. "Ms. Beatrice already gave me mine," she said. 20 years. I don't answer to strangers with fresh stationery." Anna set the envelope on the console table and read fast, lips moving. Maria had taught her to hunt for verbs. Barred, enjoined, surrender. The ink was expensive. The words were blunt. Beatrice's tiny blue note burned in Anna's pocket. The Blue Room knows what to do. She looked up the sweep of the staircase to the second floor where afternoon light pooled like a kept promise. "Helen," she said quietly. "Blue Room." "Second floor, East End," Helen replied without missing a beat. Beatrice used it for letters and lilies. Then, to the attorneys, "You may wait in the parlor. I don't allow shoes on the rugs." She didn't wait for agreement. Elvira stayed in the foyer, gloved hands on her clutch. "If you flee upstairs for theatrics, Ms. Morales, understand that paper wins." "Not always," Anna said, already moving. Sophia fell into step, eyes bright with a librarian's thrill. Mateo clutched his stegosaurus and whispered, "Treasure room." The Blue Room was what its name promised. Walls the color of hydrangeas in fog, a writing desk facing the sea, a vase of silk irises gathering dust. In the far corner, a low dresser with a shallow drawer, and at its back, a small square door the size of a bread pan. Anna slid the brass key into the slot. The old metal turned like a sigh. Inside, a tidy safe, blue enamel, combination dial dulled by fingers. A brass tag hung from a hook, 2/1447, DD and BLS. "Valentine's Day," Sophia breathed. "Dad and Beatrice?" Anna dialed. The latch released. Paper and velvet waited. A stack of documents wrapped in a ribbon the color of beach glass, a small ledger, a velvet box the size of a cufflink case, and a letter sealed with the same wax S stamped on the lavender envelope. She broke the seal. "To the woman who keeps Daniel's children warm," wrote Beatrice in her steady hand. "If Elvira mistakes image for legacy, show her what I signed when my mind was salt clear." The ribboned stack held 3 things that made Anna's breath lift. 1. A recorded deed in escrow, transferring Seacrest Manor to the Seacrest Trust upon admission of the codicil or, failing that, upon the trustee's sworn affidavit that the house risked waste by neglect. Stamped by the county clerk, date from 2 summers back. 2. A license of occupancy and caretaking, executed by Beatrice and countersigned by Helen, granting immediate residential use to the trustee and caretaker for the prevention of waste and for the establishment of warming services for families. It cited the very statute Maria had circled in her clinic binder, Doctrine of Permissive Waste and Emergency Occupancy. 3. A letter addressed to Elvira, handwritten and unflinching. If you are reading this, you have confused reputation with responsibility. The house is for warmth. Stand aside or stand inside and work. B. Mateo tapped the velvet box. "Open it." Inside, not jewels, keys. Dozens of small brass keys on labeled tags. Gate, boiler, west wing, garden shed, pantry cellar, coach house, office safe. And at the bottom, a debit card with Seacrest Trust, operating embossed, and a sticky note in Beatrice's handwriting, initial funding $250,000, used for heat and bread. Sophia laughed, startled and delighted. She literally left bread money. Footsteps below. A voice like paper. "Ms. Morales?" the olive-suited attorney called. "We must insist." Anna gathered the documents and moved, the house moving with her. Boards creaking in recognition, stair rail smooth under her hand. In the foyer, Elvira stood perfectly framed beneath Beatrice's portrait, as if the ghost were staging the scene. Anna set the license of occupancy and caretaking atop the restraining order, then placed the clerk-stamped deed beside it. "Beatrice anticipated your definition of order," she said, not unkind. "This license authorizes us to be here to prevent waste and to open warming services. Utilities on, doors open. The deed is recorded. The trust is owner in waiting. Your TRO bars change. It can't undo what's already recorded." The attorney scanned, color draining in small professional increments. "Where did you obtain?" "From the Blue Room," Helen said, smug as a satisfied boiler. "Where ladies keep lilies and law." Elvira took the letter with her name. She read. Her face did not change for a full 10 seconds. Then the pearls shifted with a breath she couldn't quite control. "Mother loved a flourish," she said, but the edges were fraying. "This warming nonsense is how we keep pipes from bursting and people from breaking," Anna said gently. "Starting with Saturday breakfast. No forms, no questions." The front bell pealed again, one deep, old chime. Through the glass, red and blue flashed against the dusk. "Sheriff," Helen murmured. Someone called quick. A deputy stepped in, hat in hand, boots damp with salt. "Evening. I'm Deputy Walsh. We've got a temporary order to post. We don't like to be the meat in the sandwich, but here we are." He looked at Elvira, then at the kids, at the caretaker, at the portrait. "You all the parties." Anna slid the license and the deed forward. "Deputy, we'll comply with lawful limits. The court can argue about fancy Latin next week. But per this recorded license, we are authorized to occupy to prevent waste and to run warming services consistent with safety code. Boilers on. Doors open until the judge says otherwise." Walsh read with a patience you only learn in small counties and long winters. "Huh," he said finally, scratching his chin. "My mama used to say, 'Don't let the pipes freeze while the lawyers bicker.' Looks like Ms. Sargent wrote that down fancier." He turned the page, found Helen's countersignature, and nodded to her. "Ms. Davis." "Deputy?" Helen acknowledged, chin up. Walsh posted the restraining order on the inside of the door, then tapped it. "This means no construction, no press events, no moving Aunt Sally's piano. But it doesn't say you can't have coffee and oatmeal for half the county if you're allowed to be here to keep the heat from dying." He touched the license with one finger. "And this here says you are." Elvira's control slipped a fraction. "Deputy, we expect enforcement." "You're getting it," he said mildly. "Both flavors." He tipped his hat toward Anna. "Ma'am, keep it calm. Ma'am," to Elvira. "Appeals go upstairs, not through my radio." He stepped back into the winter air. The lights slid away. Silence hummed. The house seemed to settle, timbers relaxing, heat deciding to rise. Somewhere, a gull laughed like a heckler. Anna lifted Beatrice's operating card and set it on the console next to the keys. Saturday, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. Breakfast by 8. Open the east sunroom. We'll need tables, hot plates, a sign that says, "Come in out of the cold." Helen smiled like someone who'd been waiting to be told to do exactly that for years. I'll ring the church, the library, Sullivan's for bread heels. The garden ladies will bring jam. I'll find cots for 2 families by Friday. Sophia slipped her hand into Anna's. I can make flyers, she said, English and Spanish. And I'll sort the kids' books. Mateo thunked his stegosaurus on the console like a stamp. I'll be the door guy, he declared. I'll say welcome, and also watch your step, because the rug moves. Elvira looked at the letter one more time, Beatrice's hand, unmistakable, and then at the portrait above her. For a breath, the steel softened and something like a daughter flickered through. She set the letter down carefully. This isn't over, she said, but it landed less like a threat and more like a report. Good, Anna replied. Neither is the winter. Outside, the sky turned pewter. In the kitchen, Helen clanged a pot on the stove and turned the burner with the confidence of a captain. The house, which had known long silences, began to make the smaller sounds of purpose. Drawers opening, a mop bucket rolling, a desk drawer sliding shut over new lists. On the console, the blue key caught the last light and held it. At the edge of the drive, 2 sets of headlights appeared, one silver, careful, one muddy Subaru with a crooked bumper. Help, Anna thought. Or trouble. Maybe both. She squared her shoulders, smoothed the restraining order flat with her palm, and went to open the door. The first set of headlights belonged to a silver Mercedes easing up the drive like it was afraid of gravel. The second was a muddy Subaru with a bungee cord holding the bumper. Trouble and help, Anna guessed, though which was which would sort itself out. Carlos stepped from the Mercedes in a wool coat that somehow still looked formal over jeans. He took in the posted order on the door, the glow from the kitchen, the sight of Sophia and Mateo racing past with a stack of mixing bowls. His mouth pressed thin, then warmed a degree. Evening, he said. I brought records. He lifted a banker's box. From my mother's study. If you're going to run this place, you should know its stubborn corners. The Subaru disgorged Maria Delgado and 2 women in puffer coats, hauling folding tables and a plastic crate labeled Library Story Time. We should have texted, Maria said, breath smoking. We figured you'd say yes anyway. She clocked Carlos with lawyer eyes and nodded. Mr. Sergeant. Helen, Anna called toward the kitchen. Can you put on another pot? Then to everyone, come in, please, and wipe your feet. Helen is fierce about her floors. The foyer turned into triage in the best sense. Maria spread files on the console, skimming the restraining order and the Blue Room license with a grin that was half admiration, half, I can't believe the universe gave us this gift. The library ladies, Pat and Denise from the Southampton Free, unfurled bilingual flyers Sophia had designed. Warm breakfast, caliente desayuno. 8 to 10 a.m., no questions asked. Helen slid a pot roast into the oven for the volunteers and laid out Sullivan's day-old loaves like they were gold bars. Mateo assigned himself door guy, practicing, Welcome, watch your step, rug moves. Carlos followed Anna into the parlor, set the banker's box on a covered sofa, and pulled the sheet away gently like he was unveiling a painting. She planned more than we ever let her do, he admitted. Garden maps, donor letters, a list of contractors who actually show up. And this? Anna lifted a green folder rubber-banded tight, tabbed if contested. Her stomach did a small electric flip. That, Carlos said, was the one she waved at Elvira once, and we all thought it was theater. Maybe it wasn't. Anna set it aside, for when her hands were steady. "Stay for dinner," she said, surprising herself. Carlos glanced toward the kitchen, toward the life spilling out of it. "I'm not popular with my niece at the moment," he said dryly. "Then you'll fit in," Anna said. "This house is for people with complicated invitations." They worked until the rooms felt less like a museum and more like a place. The posted order on the door was still a bruise on the day, but within the bruise warmth pooled. By 9, the sign was wired to the iron gate. "Come in out of the cold." By 10, the operating debit card bought coffee urns, oatmeal, milk, eggs, fruit, and 3 ridiculous bags of marshmallows because Mateo insisted cocoa needs clouds. Saturday cracked open crisp and bright. The ocean sounded like it was chewing ice. At 7:30, the first car rolled in, a landscaper in a paint-flecked pickup with 2 sleepy kids in the back seat. Then a woman in scrubs, hair in a messy bun, eyes thanks before her mouth could speak. Then a grandpa in a Mets cap shepherding a toddler in a dinosaur onesie. People came the way winter teaches you to, quietly, gratefully, without questions. "Welcome," Mateo said, dead serious, holding the door with both hands. "Watch your step. Rug moves." In the sunroom, tables bloomed with bowls of oatmeal, quartered oranges, muffins, and a vat of cocoa. Sophia stood on a chair to read The Snowy Day in Spanish and English. The kids leaned in, heads bent like prayer. Helen moved through the room, refilling cups with the efficiency of someone who'd done weddings and wakes. Anna ladled and listened. A night shift CNA who missed her bus, a fisherman whose heater died, a mom whose landlord lost her work order. The house held them. That was the whole point. At 9:05, Deputy Walsh stuck his head in, hat in his hand and cheeks bitten by wind. "Checking for frozen pipes," he deadpanned, then took a mug of cocoa with a marshmallow cloud and a plate heaping enough to make a nutritionist frown. "Looks lawful, looks decent," he said to Anna. "Carry on." They did, until 9:40, when the first camera showed up. A young reporter with a desperate haircut and a cameraman with frost on his beard hovered at the threshold. "South Fork News," she said, trying to peer around Walsh's shoulder. "We got a tip the Sargent estate is hosting something." Maria stepped between them and the cocoa like she'd trained for this. "This is a warming breakfast," she said evenly. "No faces, no interviews with guests. You can film the sign and the ocean, and you can quote me. This is what a house is for. That's it." "And you are?" "Volunteer Council," Maria said. Spelled Maria. The reporter's eyes flicked to the posted order on the door, to the cameras of 3 more outlets rolling up the drive like gulls at a picnic. "We also heard there's a legal fight." "Appeals are upstairs," Walsh said around a marshmallow, nodding toward the sky. "Down here's oatmeal." They filmed the sign. They filmed the ocean. Someone tried to film a toddler. Walsh's eyebrow rose a 1/4 inch, and the lens swung away like it had been yanked by string. At 10:02, when the room had settled again into spoons against bowls and storytime claps, the next knock had a different rhythm. Flat-palmed, official. A man in a town windbreaker and a clipboard stood flanked by a woman with a badge on a lanyard. "Code enforcement," the man said. "Anonymous complaint about unlawful assembly and food service without permit." "Ah," Maria murmured, "the oldest trick in the petty book." Anna stepped forward, heart steady. "We're operating under the Seacrest Trust license of occupancy and caretaking to prevent waste," she said, already handing over the Blue Room document. Warming breakfast, no fees, no commercial sales. We're using disposable serviceware and packaged goods where required. We'll apply for a temporary food permit by Monday. Today is about heat and calories. The woman with the lanyard read. Her shoulders lost an inch of suspicion. The man eyed Walsh, who shrugged. Pipes aren't freezing, the deputy said. Neither are people. He tipped his mug toward the code officer's clipboard. You can write me up for marshmallow misuse. The officers did what officers do. Looked, measured, politely scolded about hand-washing signage, and finding no villainy, signed a notice with a compliance checklist. Get the permit Monday, the woman said, and move that outlet strip off the floor. Otherwise, keep folks warm. When the door closed behind them, the room exhaled. The cocoa pot burbled in approval. It should have been the end of the tests for one morning. But right before they shut the line at 10, a courier in a ski cap appeared with a thick cream envelope and a clipboard. For Ms. Morales, he said, indifferent. Signature required. Inside, a motion thick with citations and adjectives, emergency injunction, irreparable harm, risk of depreciation, public narrative, and a notice that an expedited hearing had been granted for Monday at 9 a.m. in Riverhead. Paper stapled to the back in a different hand, a note on Elvira's personal stationery. Anna, this spectacle helps no one. If you appoint a professional trustee acceptable to the family, I will not contest your custody of the children. Decline, and we will litigate until winter ends. Anna read it twice. The room around her softened into a distant hum. Spoons, Sophia laughing at a child's knock-knock joke, Helen telling Pat to please put the good scissors back in the jar. The note in her hand was cold in a way the ocean wasn't. She set Elvira's letter beside Beatrice's. Legacy and Image stared at each other across a console table. Mom? Sophia asked, catching the weather in Anna's face. We have court Monday, Anna said. And a choice that is not a choice. Maria skimmed the motion, lips pulling sideways. They'll try to paint you as impulsive. We'll counter with the license, the deed, and a line of neighbors who ate oatmeal with joy. Carlos, who had kept wisely to the kitchen all morning, approached, eyes on the green folder Anna had set aside. If they push, he said, low, you open that. Anna slipped the rubber band free. Inside, bank routing numbers, a letter from a community foundation pledging a matching grant if Seacrest opened within 30 days, a list of friendly affidavits Beatrice had coaxed from staff, vendors, and the town librarian. And, tucked at the back, a single page in Beatrice's hand. If they mistake spectacle for strength, remember, you are not asking. You are opening a door. The page below that was a map, hand-drawn, of the coach house office. In the margin, safe number 2, for the judge's eyes. The cocoa had cooled. The sunroom smelled like oranges and wet wool. Out beyond the glass, the Atlantic shifted from steel to pewter to something almost blue. Anna looked at her children, at Maria, at Helen, at Carlos holding his mother's stubborn legacy like a fragile heirloom. Okay, she said, tucking the map and Beatrice's line into her pocket. We feed people. We clean up. We print permits. We bake more muffins. Then you and I, she nodded to Maria. We go to the coach house. Maria grinned, all straight teeth and fight. Adventure and affidavits. And I, Carlos said, will call a judge's clerk I once donated a library wing with. He winced at himself. That sounded as bad as it felt. I'll call, for scheduling, not pressure. Good, Anna said. We'll win with paper and pancakes. The last guests drifted out layered in borrowed scarves. The volunteers loaded dish bins like a practiced pit crew. Sophia taped the hand-washing sign higher. Matteo collected marshmallow casualties and called it science. On the console, 2 letters lay side by side, the one that tried to shrink the room and the one that made it bigger. Anna chose which to pocket. By late afternoon, the ocean had turned to hammered silver again. Anna shrugged into Daniel's old peacoat from the hall closet, still smelling faintly of winter and him, and stepped into the crisp air with Maria at her side. The coach house loomed at the end of the path, shingles dark, windows reflecting sky. The map crinkled in her pocket like a heartbeat. She fit the key ring from the blue box into the coach house door. The lock turned with the same satisfying sigh. "Ready?" Maria asked. "No," Anna said truthfully, and smiled. "Let's go anyway." The coach house door stuck at the bottom like it had opinions. Anna hip-bumped it open and breathed in the smell of dust, motor oil, and old paper. Maria flicked on a lamp. A cone of light found a metal desk, a file cabinet with a broken handle, and a framed photograph of Beatrice in galoshes planting tomatoes in a trench coat. "Map says north wall," Maria murmured, tracing the hand-drawn arrow. They ran their palms along beadboard until Anna's fingers snagged a tiny recessed latch. A panel slid back to reveal a squat gray safe with a rotary dial and a brass tag, for the judge's eyes. "Subtle," Maria said, grinning. The combination was inked on the map margin in Beatrice's tidy hand. Anna dialed 5 to 1236, the safe unlocked with a sigh. Inside lay a leather folio, a thumb drive in a velvet pouch, and a letter on cream paper, the sergeant's seal pressed deep. Anna read first. "To the surrogate of Suffolk County. Should this codicil be contested by my heirs on grounds of reputation rather than law, I provide the following supplemental materials to clarify intent and capacity." Below, a list like the spine of a casebook: neurocognitive evaluation, normal, handwriting analysis, notarized statement of purpose, and, Anna blinked, a video. Maria whistled low. She lawyered her legacy. They opened the folio. Copies of the neuropsych report. A sworn affidavit from Beatrice's internist. A grant pledge from a community foundation earmarked for Seacrest. Matching funds if doors opened within 30 days. Vendor letters. A proposed governance charter naming a board composed of a school principal, a nurse, a social worker, a community librarian, and, Anna swallowed, trustee, Ana Morales, removable only for cause by a 3/4 vote of that board or by court order. "Capacity, intent, structure," Maria said, tapping each page. "A judge's trifecta." They plugged the thumb drive into a dusty laptop that whined awake like a dog. Beatrice's face filled the old screen. Hair neat, eyes direct, cardigan buttoned wrong at the top in a way that made Anna ache. "If you're watching this," Beatrice said, voice thin with age and iron underneath, "someone is confusing performance with purpose. I wish to be plain. I am not whimsical. I am deliberate. This house has been a stage for parties long enough. It will be a shelter." She looked right into the camera the way some people look right into a person. "Elvira, if you are in the room, stand inside and work, or stand aside." Maria sat back, blinking hard. "We take this to court first thing," she said. "We ask to play it if the judge will allow." Sunday was a blur of muffins and mops and forms printed from the county website. Helen polished a brass plaque no one remembered installing. Seacrest Manor, 1904. Sophia redesigned the flyer with a line at the bottom, permits in progress, just for the code officer. Mateo built a marshmallow management plan with crayons and very serious arrows. At dawn, Monday, they took the first heir to Riverhead, Anna in Daniel's peacoat and the good white blouse, Maria with the folio strapped to her chest like armor, Carlos carrying a garment bag and a thermos of coffee he swore was better than Dunkin'. It wasn't. Reporters waited on the courthouse steps in breath clouds. A woman with a mic shoved toward Anna. "Are you turning the Sargent estate into a shelter without permission?" "Breakfast," Anna said, holding Sophia's hand tight. "We're serving breakfast." Inside, the courtroom felt like last week's, wood polish, whispers, but warmer. Deputy Walsh was posted at the back, hat tucked under his arm, pretending not to be there. Elvira arrived in winter white again, lawyers flanking her like train cars. She didn't look at Anna. The judge, same silver bob, same chain, took the bench. "On the emergency application for injunction," she said, voice steady. "Counsel for petitioners." Ortega glided to the lectern. Words flowered. Irreparable harm, dilution of reputation, depreciation, unlawful occupancy. He described cameras and oatmeal like they were crimes. "My clients are willing to appoint a professional trustee to maintain the property pending appeal," he concluded, in exchange for Miss Zorzal Morales refraining from further public spectacles. Maria rose. No glide, just straight lines. She laid the blue room license on the lectern, then the recorded deed in escrow, then the governance charter, then the neuropsych report, then the foundation pledge. "We have authority to prevent waste and to provide warming services. We have structure. We have intent, written, notarized, and, if the court permits, spoken by the decedent herself." The judge adjusted her glasses. "Spoken." Maria held up the thumb drive. "A video recorded 6 months before death. We believe it is admissible to show state of mind and intent. We provided a copy to opposing counsel this morning." Ortega tightened around the eyes. "We object to theatrics." "Mr. Ortega," the judge said mildly, "I like to see who I'm about to disappoint." A ripple of laughter softened the benches. "We'll view the recording, briefly." A clerk dimmed the lights. On the small courtroom TV, Beatrice appeared again, cardigan misbuttoned, spine unbent. She said the same plain words: no champagne, no chandeliers, just purpose. When she said Elvira's name, the winter-white shoulders in the first row flinched. Lights up, paper rustled. The judge's gaze slid to Elvira. "Miss Sargent, do you wish to address the court?" Elvira stood, controlling each movement like choreography. "Your Honor," she said, "my grandmother was formidable. She was also romantic about charity. Houses require discipline. Legacies require stewardship. Ms. Morales is very good at sentiment. My family is good at institutions." Anna rose before she could think not to. "Your Honor," she asked, "may I?" The judge nodded. Anna didn't look at Elvira. She looked at the bench. "I'm good at Tuesday mornings," she said, "at cashing tips to keep the lights on, at getting 2 kids to school on 1 Metro card, at warming oatmeal for people who worked all night. Ms. Sargent is right. Houses require discipline. That's why we have a board and a budget. Her grandmother built chandeliers. I can keep the boiler running." Silence held. Even the radiator seemed to lean in. Carlos cleared his throat, like a man stepping onto a different road. "Your Honor," he said, standing from the second row without being called. "Carlos Sargent, son of Beatrice. My niece and I disagree about many things, but my mother's mind was clear, and she hated empty rooms. If the court allows Seacrest to open under Ms. Morales' trusteeship, I will serve as an unpaid advisor at the board's pleasure without vote to facilitate town coordination. He winced slightly, as if allergic to humility. And I will shut up when told. The judge's mouth twitched, noted. Ortega hurried back to form. None of this addresses the central issue: irreparable harm to a historic property used for unsanctioned public events. Serving breakfast, Walsh muttered from the back, loudly enough for 3 rows to hear. The judge tapped her pen against Beatrice's charter. Harm, she repeated. I see harm in frozen pipes and a public taught that philanthropy is a velvet rope. I see less harm in cocoa. She looked over her glasses. Here is what will happen. Every head tilted forward. The temporary restraining order remains in effect as to alterations, press events, and occupancy beyond safety limits, she said. But the court recognizes the recorded license of occupancy and caretaking and the trustee's duty to prevent waste. Seacrest may operate warming breakfasts and emergency overnight accommodations for up to 4 families pending permit approvals under the supervision of this court and the town. Ortega opened his mouth. She held up a palm. Further, the court adopts the proposed governance structure. Ms. Morales is appointed interim trustee. The named community board will be constituted within 14 days. Financial reporting will be filed monthly. Any deviation, we revisit. She glanced at Elvira. Miss Sargent, you may file your appeal. In the meantime, consider your grandmother's plain words. A breath moved through the room like wind through wheat. Maria sagged a fraction, then straightened. Carlos exhaled. Walsh grinned at his boots. Elvira kept her face still, but the pearls seemed heavier. One more thing, the judge added almost casually. The court orders counsel to meet and confer on a joint statement to the press. The headline will not be Sargent Family Feud. It will be Historic House Opens Doors for Winter. Understood? Understood, Ortega said, tasting lemon. Anna didn't realize she was gripping the bench until her fingers hurt. She released, willing herself to memorize the feel of this exact moment. The gavel not falling so much as pointing. The hush before a life turns its next corner. Reporters waited in the hall, microphones like flowers again. Maria faced them with bullet points and sentences that fit on TV. Anna kept Sofia and Mateo behind her legs and said the only thing she meant to say. We'll see you Saturday. There'll be oatmeal. On the steps, Snow threatened and thought better of it. Elvira approached, a controlled winter front. For a breath, the 2 women stood close enough to see themselves reflected in each other's pupils. This isn't over, Elvira said. Less acid than Friday, more bone. It shouldn't be, Anna replied. We're only at Monday. Elvira's gaze flicked to Sofia and Mateo. Daniel's face split between them and back to Anna. I will send over the family archivist, she said abruptly. If the story is changing, the records should be correct. Thank you, Anna said. It sounded like a truce drawn in pencil. They turned in opposite directions, Elvira to a waiting car, Anna to the Lear schedule taped inside the glass. Maria bumped her shoulder like a teammate. You were perfect, she whispered. Now we build. Back in Queens that night, the radiator hissed and the 7 trains sang and the lavender envelope lay flat at last. Anna set Beatrice's thumb drive in a teacup on the shelf like a relic. She texted Helen. Back tomorrow. Start the permit stack. Tell Mateo door guy reports at 7:45. Helen replied with a photo of the sunroom chalkboard. Saturday menu. Oatmeal, oranges, muffins, hope. Anna smiled. Let it be simple for one breath. and turned off the light. In the dark, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voicemail transcription lit the screen. Ms. Morales, this is a producer from a national morning show. We'd love to... She swiped it away. One thing at a time. Then another buzz. Maria, check your email. Opposing counsel sent a joint statement draft. You'll love the first sentence. Anna opened it. The Sargent family is pleased to support the interim opening of Seacrest Manor under court supervision. She looked up at the ceiling and laughed once, quietly, in the way people do when the world slides, finally 1 inch in the right direction. And then her screen lit again with a text from a number she didn't have, labeled only Archivist. I'm at the gate with boxes, and one thing Ms. Sargent doesn't know exists. Anna's thumb hovered. She typed back, We're here. Come in out of the cold. The text came just after 10. Archivist. I'm at the gate with boxes, and one thing Ms. Sargent doesn't know exists. Anna was still in Daniel's peacoat. She met the figure in a wool hat and red scarf at the porch, breath fogging. I'm Ruth Kaplan, the woman said, setting down a banker's box with the ease of someone who'd carried history up too many staircases. I cataloged the Sargent family papers for 30 years. Beatrice told me to come when winter needed the truth. Tonight felt appropriate. Helen whisked in with a towel and tea before anyone could be gallant. Mateo, pajamas tucked into socks, planted himself at Ruth's elbow like a deputized assistant. Sophia hovered, already scanning labels. Gardens, 1960s, Foundation Correspondence, Sargent House, private. Ruth rested a hand on the last box. This one is why I texted from the gate. She peeled back the top. Inside, bundles tied with blue ribbon, a leather notebook, and on top, an envelope sealed with that familiar pressed S. Anna broke the seal. To the keeper of the house when the doors open, Beatrice had written. There were 2 plans, the one my heirs admired and the one I meant. Use what follows to finish. Under the letter lay a simple ledger titled, in Beatrice's small, decisive hand, Ledger of Mercies. Each page held a date and a note. February 14, church basement. Young mother gave her seat to Mr. Romano. Knit cap to child not hers. Marva's January 3, night nurse paid another nurse's cab fare. April 12. Groundsman fixed neighbor's fence, no charge. Tiny acts, entire worlds. Ruth exhaled. She wrote those at night when the house was too quiet. Said she wanted the foundation to measure itself by those, not gala checks. Maria arrived mid-sentence, hair damp from the mist, eyes bright. Carlos, texted by Helen, slipped in behind her, collar up against the cold. The parlor became a table of evidence again. Only this time it felt less like defense and more like a map. Ruth lifted a flat folder stamped Seacrest Endowment. Beatrice knew the family would argue financial harm. She sold art she couldn't stand, a portrait of some ancestor who never blinked, and placed the proceeds in a donor-advised fund. The release to Seacrest is conditioned. She tapped the clause. Funds shall be transferred when the house, A, constitutes a community board in the form attached. B, operates warming services for 30 days, and C, is accepted by signature of the trustee and anyone living Sargent descendant pledging service without authority. Ruth's mouth tilted. She called it the humility clause. Carlos whistled low. That's her pure mother. Maria flipped the page, hunting the numbers. How much? Ruth slid out the statement with a reverence that felt like church. $25 million to start. Matching pledge on the foundation's letter. Another 10. Released at 90 days. Helen made a small noise she rarely made, a prayer with an exhale attached. Sophia's hand found Anna's. Matteo ceremoniously placed his stegosaurus atop the ledger like a paperweight of tiny courage. "This moots half their legal song," Maria said, already planning. "If we meet the conditions, harm evaporates, but the clause needs a sergeant." Everyone's eyes drifted to Carlos. He shook his head ruefully. "I'll sign gladly, but read the exact words." Anna did. Anyone living sergeant descendant pledging service without authority. She looked up. The signature must be coupled with a promise to serve without a vote. Carlos smiled, almost relieved. "Then it fits me exactly." Ruth cleared her throat. "There's one more thing Beatrice asked me to lock away." From the bottom of the box, she produced a padded mailer labeled "For Elvira." Inside, no legal parchment, no dagger, just a stack of photos and a letter. Elvira at 8, hair in crooked braids, handing a paper cup of lemonade to the mailman. Elvira at 16, reading to kids at the library, with a patience that softened her stern mouth. Elvira at 27, arms full of blankets after a winter storm, cheeks wind-burned and smiling like no one was watching. Maria's eyebrows rose. "Receipts." "Memories," Ruth corrected. She was kind once, before rooms taught her other habits. "Beatrice told me, if winter comes for Elvira, hand her back her warm coat." The front bell chimed. Polite, not insistent. Anna didn't need the camera peep to know who it was. Elvira stepped in without snow on her shoes, pearls steady, eyes calculating and tired. "Miss Kaplan," she said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Delivering records," Ruth said, "and a mirror." Elvira's gaze landed on the endowment file, then snagged on the conditions. Her chin lifted. "Mother always loved a test." "So do judges," Maria said lightly. "And furnaces." Elvira ignored the quip and turned to Anna. "You could have called, negotiated. Instead, you invited the county into our hallway." "Our hallway," Anna repeated, and felt the house short hum in agreement. She slid the ledger of mercies forward. "Your grandmother wrote this instead of sleeping. She built a fund so the house could stop being a stage. We need a sergeant's signature, without power attached," Carlos offered. "It can be you." Elvira looked at the ledger as if it might stain. "A pledge to serve without a vote?" She tried to laugh. It came out paper dry. "You ask me to be ornamental on purpose. I'm asking you to choose," Anna said softly. "Not the family. You." Ruth placed the photos on the table, one after another. The 8-year-old with lemonade, the library teen, the storm blankets. Elvira's eyes flickered, not quite softening, not yet hardening. She picked up the blanket photo and stood very still. "When will you ever be satisfied?" she asked no one, or everyone. "When the rooms stay warm," Helen said from the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Everything else is embroidery." Silence held while the ocean spoke in the windows. "I will not be managed," Elvira said at last. But it sounded like habit speaking while the heart thought. She set the photo down with care. "What exactly does your board look like?" "Principal, nurse, social worker, librarian," Maria said, tapping the charter. "Open meetings, monthly reports, transparency to the court for a year, then annually." "And you?" Elvira to Anna. "How do you keep from becoming sentimental?" Anna smiled, tired and honest. "Tuesday mornings, broken toasters, rent, children who don't care about last names when they're cold." Carlos's phone buzzed. He glanced, then held it up. "The judge's clerk just emailed. She'll hear status in 30 days. If the endowment triggers, she'll fold it into the order. The room felt like a held breath finally exhaled. Elvira's gaze flitted to the doorway, to the portrait of Beatrice, to the ledger of small mercies that had never made a gala speech. She reached for a pen. The room leaned in. "Not here," Ruth said gently, surprising everyone. Beatrice left one instruction for the signature. She pointed to a line in the endowment file, written in that careful hand. "Sign in the blue room. Looking at the sea. So we remember what we're for." They climbed the stairs together. Anna, Elvira, Ruth, Maria, Carlos, Sophia, and Mateo on the landing like solemn birds. In the blue room, the afternoon sky had gone pewter again. The desk faced the Atlantic like a compass that never forgot. Elvira stood at the window a long time. When she sat, she didn't fuss with her coat. She took the pen and read the clause aloud, once, twice, as if tasting each word for poison or cure. "I pledge to serve without authority," she said finally, voice low. "To unlock funds for the house my grandmother meant." The pen hovered over the line. The room's quiet pressed. Anna felt the wildness of a world that could hinge on an inch of ink. From the hall downstairs, the doorbell chimed again. 2 quick notes. Helen's voice floated up. "Can someone see to the foyer?" Elvira looked up, annoyed at the interruption, then signed her name in a handwriting that had once been a girl's. The ink shone wet and undeniable. "Who's at the door?" Mateo called, because door duty mattered. Helen answered, half laughing, half crying. "No one you'd expect," she said, "and exactly who we need." Ruth's smile ghosted. "Then, Beatrice," she whispered to the house, "you timed it right." Anna moved toward the stairs, heart thudding with the rhythm of a life turning. At the bottom waited a visitor and, if the ledger and the clause and the winter had all conspired, the last key they didn't know they needed. She took the first step down. Anna reached the foyer as the door swung open to a gust of clean, salt, cold air. On the stoop stood 2 people and 1 clipboard. "Morning," said the woman in a town windbreaker, cheeks pink from the climb. "Jennifer Alvarez, code enforcement. Brought your temporary food service permit. You moved that power strip. Thank you for reading my mind." She held up an orange placard like a blessing. "Post this in the sunroom and you're official through spring." Beside her, a woman in a navy coat lifted a slim case. "Nora Byrne, East End Community Foundation. I'm here about Miss Sargent's pledge." Her eyes flicked, curious but kind, to the posted order, then the warmth spilling from the kitchen. "Is the board constituted? And do you have a Sargent signature?" "Upstairs, ink still wet," Anna said, pulse steadying into something like joy. "Come in out of the cold." They did. Sophia slipped the permit from Alvarez's hand and taped it next to the hand-washing sign she'd centered twice. Mateo stood on tiptoe and traced the word temporary, nodding like a foreman. Nora set her case on the console, clicked it open, and produced a printed letter, a wire form, and a check the size of a book, but a promise as wide as an ocean. Per Ms. Sargent's conditions, community board, warming services, and a Sargent pledge to serve without authority. We're authorized to release the first tranche. 25 million today. 10 more in 90 days if operations remain open and compliant. She paused, a smile warming at the edges. "I watched your Saturday online. Coco looked like cloud cover. My mother's a night nurse." She would have cried. Elvira descended then, paler than the blue room but composed, Ruth and Maria flanking her like history and law. She stopped at Nora's case, at the check, at the posted permit that was more beautiful than chandeliers. For a beat, she was simply a granddaughter in a house that finally matched its purpose. "I'll serve on linens," she said, to Anna, not to the room. "Give me a schedule, no speeches." "Wednesdays," Helen answered from the kitchen doorway without looking up. "And bring decent hand cream." Carlos laughed, the sound rough and relieved. "I'll wrangle town meetings and the boiler man. No speeches either." Walsh slipped in on a drift of cold air, holding 2 boxes of Sullivan's rolls and a grin. "Thought you might need proof of community support," he said. "Also carbs." By noon, the board signed its first minutes at the library table. Principal Harris from the public school, Nurse Deshawn, who ran the immunization clinic, social worker Lila Ortiz from the county office, Ruth as archivist advisor, Maria as volunteer counsel, who kept insisting, "I'm billing exactly 0, Carlos as non-voting advisor, and Anna, trustee, steady as Tuesday. Nora watched the signatures line up, then tapped an email on her phone. "Wire initiated," she said. "You'll have operating funds within the hour." It came before the kettle boiled, a gentle vibrate in Anna's pocket, a real number where once there'd been subtraction. She looked up at Beatrice's portrait. The eyes didn't change, but the room felt like it exhaled. News crews drifted by that afternoon, herded by Maria to the driveway for the judge's jointly ordered one statement. Ortega read it with immaculate diction. Maria echoed the second paragraph. Carlos added a sentence about community stewardship. Elvira stood behind them, quiet and unadorned, a linen schedule in her hand. The headline the next morning was exactly what the judge had assigned. "Historic House Opens Doors for Winter." The subhead, "Breakfast, Not Battles," made Helen snort so hard she had to set the kettle down. Life took a shape. The orange permit glowed like a sunrise over the serving table. The posted order stayed taped to the door until the hearing that lifted it, a month later, when the judge praised monthly reports that read like recipes. Heat, on. Beds, 4 families, 7 nights. Oatmeal, 48 bowls. Mercies, uncounted. The endowment landed clean. The match followed. The sunroom learned to hum with story time and wary laughter. Upstairs, a quiet wing filled with soft blankets and the sound of sleep you don't have to guard. On the 30th morning, Nora returned with a thermos and a camera phone. "We need a picture for our records," she said. "Triggering the match requires proof of cloud-level cocoa." They gathered under the sunroom's string lights. Volunteers in mismatched aprons, a nurse in scrubs, a grandpa in a Mets cap, a code officer with an orange placard, a deputy with a marshmallow mustache, a librarian with ink on her finger, a principal with a sticker star on his lapel. Elvira knelt by a kid tugging a sock, hands competent on cold toes. Carlos adjusted the boiler schedule on a clipboard like it might run a ship. Sophia slid the Ledger of Mercies into a glass case in the foyer, opened to a fresh page with her neat looping date at the top. Mateo added 1 in block letters. Door guy warned 6 people about rug. No one tripped. Ruth nodded, solemn. "Exactly the measure Beatrice meant," she said. After cleanup, Anna walked the path down to the beach with her children. February still bit, but the sky had that brittle blue that promises change. Gulls argued like they always do. The water said its ancient piece and didn't care who you were. "Will it always be like this?" Mateo asked, small hand in hers, boots squeaking. "Like what?" Anna said. "People coming," he said. "Us making cocoa, the sign." "I hope so," Anna answered. "And when winter ends, we'll keep the breakfasts and open the garden beds. We'll add tutoring and daycare and the Tuesday night clinic Nurse Deshawn wants. Houses are like people. They're alive if they're used. Sophia tucked her hair behind her ear, thinking big thoughts in her turret room way. Do we ever go back? She asked quietly. To the apartment, to the trains. We can visit, Anna said. Daniel's peacoat belongs to both places. She squeezed her daughter's hand. But our work is here now. And work is a kind of home. Back inside, the blue room held its steady light. Elvira stood at the window alone, hands bare, eyes on the line where sea meets sky. My grandmother would have liked you, she said without turning. It sounded less like surrender than recognition. She liked truth, Anna said. You helped us keep it. Elvira nodded once. I'll be here Wednesday, she said. Linens. In the foyer, the sign waited by the door. Come in out of the cold. Not temporary anymore, just true. Under it, the orange permit and the court order had been replaced by a small brass plate. Seacrest Trust, open to the public, all are welcome. Someone had tucked a spray of rosemary into the frame. It made the air smell like memory and kitchens in spring. Anna rested her palm on the plate a moment, then on the ledger of mercies beside it. She wrote in careful script, Today, one house remembered what it was for. People came in from the winter. We kept the water hot. She closed the book gently. Outside, the Atlantic breathed. Inside, the radiators hummed. Between them, a life, a community, took its own first sturdy steps, and the doors stayed open.